Thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. Today we're going to look at October, and the CFSV2 certainly has a very interesting upper air pattern across the northern hemisphere here. You notice here, this is looking down over the northern hemisphere, so looking over the pole, North America, Greenland, the British Isles, and of course Europe and Asia. Very interesting to see the model having a very strong positive up over the eastern portion of the Arctic Ocean. So over the Urals, we've got what's well known in meteorology as the Ural blocking, and that there is linkage there between a strong blocking area of high pressure over the Ural Mountains, which is basically the dividing line between Europe and Asia. When you get strong blocking over this region, that tends to have an influence on the stratosphere and the polar vortex. And there is certainly a lot of indications, by the way, and this is completely opposite of last year at this time, is a weakening of the polar vortex given this strong positive here. So this is the CFSV2 for the month of October here, and you can see the blocking here. So this would indicate, by the way, a negative Arctic oscillation. So a weak Arctic oscillation, the likelihood of cold air getting displaced from the Arctic into the middle latitude region is fairly high, I think. And also the fact that we've got a fairly strong negative here sitting directly over the British Isles here. So this indicates a cool and wet October based on this model run here. So it is a very interesting look here, and but I'm very intrigued by this here, because this here is something really worth paying attention to, especially if you're a winter weather fan like myself and like many of the viewers watching this. I know you would be excited to see this here, but I'm very intrigued indeed, because this here would also enhance the amount of snow over Siberia. If you're with the theory regarding a big October snowpack over Eurasia versus a negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, certainly this would be a positive indeed for that. And I think it also indicates a possibility of a more negative Arctic oscillation. Not so much. Let's kind of take away the aspect of the North Atlantic oscillation, because at the end of the day, the negative Arctic oscillation, in a sense, has a bigger influence in terms of winter weather for the middle latitudes across the northern hemisphere than it does just solely the North Atlantic oscillation. So that is something very much worth paying attention to. You look here at the GFS ensemble, and it has a very negative looking Arctic oscillation. Now, if you look back, all the way back to what? This is the start of the summer, so June 1st, all the way through the summer months, you notice here it's basically near enough neutral. Then it went positive, and now it's starting to trend negative. Let's hope that this continues to trend negative, especially as we go towards the winter season, because last year, let's face it, it was away up here. It was away up here in December, January and February. And of course, we had a record strong polar vortex. This, folks, is the opposite of last year. And this would certainly be something that would definitely whet your appetite with regards to winter weather. And this is the North Atlantic oscillation here. Again, like the Arctic oscillation, generally in a neutral phase. It was a slightly below the neutral phase, so it was slightly negative at one point there during the heart of the summertime. And of course, during the month of July, it was pretty wet, and low pressure dominated across the British Isles. But then, of course, we've seen the heat in August. We're seeing a more positive North Atlantic oscillation, which of course had the trough over over Greenland, over the North Atlantic, and a ridge over Europe extending into the UK as well. We had a very firm positive here, but notice this trending negative here. So this is not a guarantee that we're going to get all of a sudden a winter this year, but certainly that is something that is worth noting is the fact that at least it is trending that way. And certainly this here is very much very exciting indeed, if you like winter. And that would correlate to the CFS V2, which has, of course, the strong blocking here over the Eastern Arctic region here. So that could have an influence on slowing down and continuing to weaken, or keep weak, should I say, the polar vortex here. And then if we can do that, and you have slightly slacker westerly winds, a weaker polar jet stream, then you've got a greater chance of not only a stratospheric warming event, but also the possibility of continuing to hold the cold down into the middle latitude region here. So certainly very interesting indeed. Oh, another thing that's rather interesting, grabbing my attention, is look at how wet the CFS V2 has for October here. Very, very wet indeed, which is also a positive player when it comes to the winter time, because Joe Bastardi way back years ago made a reference to very, very wet later fall and into the winter season can indicate where the cold is going to go during the winter time. So in other words, basically a wet October, even September into November, a wet October, November, I don't even know my calendar months, into the winter season. If you get a lot of rainfall here, he implied that you could get the trough going to where the wettest weather was during the second half of autumn here. So this is another positive factor here. So what's the model is basically saying is indicate that we're going to see cold, wet October for the British Isles and across a decent chunk of at least Western Europe, if not more than that. Looking at the sea surface temperatures, I did say a couple of weeks ago that we want to see the North Pacific cooling. If you want to see a big winter, you want to see a weaker North Atlantic jet stream, you want to see the waters in the North Pacific, south of Alaska, cooling. And look at what we're seeing. We're starting to see that taking place. So we're removing the cold to the south of Alaska here. And that is a positive when it comes to having a weaker jet stream overall. We're continuing to see the La Nina develop, not only off the western side of South America, but it's extending right out well into the Pacific here. And that, in a sense, can have a mixed fortune when it comes to winter weather. But certainly I think, at the very least, it should bring down the global temperature here. So that's an interesting factor to see here. Notice here also the waters over the North Atlantic have cooled a fair wee bit as well. We've still got a ribbon of warmth extending from British Columbia around this cooling area of water here, and extending up into Japan here. The Indian Ocean Dipole, which was very positive at this time last year, it's more neutral to slightly negative. That also, by the way, is another opposite of last year as well. So there is several factors, folks, that's playing into this that is indicating that we could see a very different winter this year compared to what we did last year. Of course, it was very, very warm. It was very wet. So it wouldn't take an awful lot to have a different winter, really. But certainly, I like what I'm seeing with regards to the cooling of the North Pacific. We also have very, very warm water here. Of course, we had the second lowest Arctic melt season on record here. And that warm water also can enhance the blocking within the high latitude region during the winter season as well. So, folks, I would pretty much put my money on at least having a colder winter than last year. The reason why I say that is because you couldn't have much warmer of a winter than we did last year. But I do think we are going to see winter this year. Whether we see an 09-10 winter or a December like 2010, that very much remains to be seen here. But certainly I like what I see. I do believe that we are going to see significant spells of winter weather this year, but we'll wait and see exactly what we get. So I'm going to continue to share my ideas as we continue to skip through the final few days of September and throughout the month of October. I'm going to be talking more and more about the winter, what we're seeing, what the models are showing, and so on and so forth. That's it for today. Hope you have a great day. I'll be back in the next few days with more. Bye for now.